Good morning once again. If you've just joined us, great to have you with us here on the AM Report. Let's hone in on this developing story. The ANC's NEC meeting ending tomorrow will deal with the thorny issue of whether or not members implicated in corruption should step aside. Now, several party leaders in the country, including former eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede, ANC MP Bongani Bongo, and ANC Secretary General Magashule, face fraud and corruption charges. The issue is likely to test the leadership of ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. 2021 local government elections are on the horizon, and there's the next elective conference a year later. Let's unpack the story now, get you some analysis. Political studies lecturer at Nelson Mandela University in the Eastern Cape, Ongama Mtimka, joins us now via our video line. Ongama, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. You know, in the build-up to our interview with you, we were asking the question about who stands to lose the most from this lack of clarity around the step-aside issue. But I suppose the question also is, who stands to gain the most?
The ANC itself stands to lose. Remember that the ANC prescribes for its members a particular code of conduct in terms of which it describes the values that it aspires to as an organization and how it wants to be seen by society. So when it is perceived by the public to be failing to deal with those that undermine its values, it's the party itself that is going to lose, notwithstanding factional interests on any specific person stepping aside.
And then the second part of my question, Ongama, you know, there is a faction that stands to gain from this lack of clarity as well.
Sure. So currently, the Secretary General of the ANC is charged formally with 21 counts of various things, ranging from corruption, among other things. So the President Cyril Ramaphosa camp wants to use that in order to weaken Ace Magashule politically, because as is the lay of the land in the ANC, nobody really fights with the Secretary General's faction and wins. So obviously, if Ace Magashule doesn't step aside, his camp, which is pro him as the next president or whoever is preferred by their camp, stands to gain should he remain in his office, because that means he can continue to influence the organization and ensure that the outcome which they prefer at the next conference, and in fact, they seem to be looking at the next NGC, is upheld. Obviously, that weakens President Ramaphosa the longer Ace Magashule stays in office, because we've arrived at a stage where there's a mutual desire of each of the factions to eliminate the other politically.
Ongama, you know, we were chatting to you about this interview in the build-up to this morning, and I want you to just outline for us, you know, the issues around the fact that the ANC is no longer going for this unity at all costs sort of facade of an organization. What does that mean for these kinds of contestations no longer now happening, you know, behind the closed doors of a meeting, after which we come out and then we give a press briefing and we phrase it the way we want to phrase it? It's now here for all of us to see. What does that mean for the governing party?
Sure. So to explain that, I'd like to use a theoretical construct of an end game in chess. So what happens is that once you enter the end game, one thing is certain is that the end is approaching. And then secondly, what becomes a focus of those involved is to ensure that the end is one in which they can guarantee a victory and ensure that they control the process leading to that. I feel that the ANC is in an end game. That means it's in a state of inevitable collapse in the way that we have known it. And all that is going to matter for factions within the ANC is to who gets to retain the name of the party so that they can have a platform on which to build in the near future using the brand ANC. So you're quite right. You're pointing out that the factions have arrived at a stage where they no longer see a unified outcome from the processes, not only from this meeting, but subsequent processes leading either to an NGC or will culminate in the final conference of the party in 2022. So my view is that neither faction wants to accommodate the other at this stage, and each perceives a unilateral outcome from this process. As a result of that, what you are going to find is a lot more robust politicking, which is aimed at consolidating whatever small victories that each camp makes. So, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if there are agitations from the camp of President Cyril Ramaphosa to, in fact, not only have ACE step aside, but ultimately be expelled from the party, Pule Zuma and Julius Malema. Mm-hmm. So, because that may be the only thing that saves them from securing the brand ANC and using it to build afresh post the 2022 conference.
But is that an option for President Cyril Ramaphosa if he is going to be looking to secure a second term? I mean, can he be seen to be dealing with corruption as the governing party's president and the country's president, but then also come 2022, make it through that elective conference successfully?
Sure. So the nature of a second term that President Cyril Ramaphosa, in fact, if I was him, I wouldn't focus so much on a second term from a country perspective, but the second term as ANC president, because my belief is that the ANC is going to face a below 50% election outcome come 2024. And as such, there are no guarantees that somebody who wins its conference is going to be the president of the country. So my view would be that whatever harsh steps he and his faction can take, they have got nothing to lose. And neither does the ACE Magashule camp have anything to lose, because it's no longer guaranteed, as far as I'm concerned, that the ANC is going to be governing party. So that should not even be a focus. What should be a focus is to ensure that they deal with the internal weakness of the party, which is unsustainable split, which is a facade of unity. So once they deal with that and have the other camp leave, whether it's President Cyril Ramaphosa who leaves the ANC and with his group to form something else, or Ace Magashule who gets expelled to form something else like Julius Malema, they need to deal with the internal weakness within the party that is fundamentally inhibiting any of the factions from building afresh in the name of the ANC to present a better offering to South Africans.
I mean, you know, what you're saying about the below 50% outcome of the next election in the country, do you think that that's something that the ANC itself has come to terms with?
It may not, Michelle. So, but I doubt that in its analysis, it's not something that is factored in. So it may be, for example, that the reason why we've seen a sudden rejuvenation of the NPA, among other things, is to try and stymie the perceptions that may cost the ANC as a party that has failed to deal with corruption. And then on the part of the Ace Magashule camp, I think that they may be thinking around, first deal with the internal weakness, which is the invasion of an enemy, as he put it, in the ANC, and then see what ways to build. There's some thoughts I have in terms of what are the aspirations of that camp, and some of them are not, kind. So I will withhold them for now. But I do think that South Africa may find itself with a political machinery that wants to even pursue mechanisms which may not necessarily be democratic in order to cling on to power.
Okay, now you've got to let us in, Ongama. That's just way too spicy to let you go at that point. Tell us more.
No, so I'll resist the temptation for now, Michelle. But what I'm thinking is that if a group within a party is going to be hell-bent on, for example, weakening institutions that are meant to hold it in check, then if we read the tea leaves, or if we read a lot more into it, we should expect that that same camp can do a lot more, of the same in order to remain in power. That's as far as I'm prepared to say at this stage.
Yeah.
But I'm in a more structured opinion piece, which I can share with yourselves. I'll put these in terms of what I think are the possibilities. I mean, we've seen some of these, the indications.
Yeah, I was about to say it's not a
see.
surprising sort of theory. We've seen this sort of building up over the past few years.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, for example, with particularly President Zuma, I don't know how much of a factor he is in ANC politics now, but we saw aspirations of a authoritarian state emerging. And I'm not saying the Cyril Ramaphosa camp is free from that, but if there are changes in certain institutions and strengthening of those institutions is anything to go by, at least we can see that there's a subscription to some of the fundamentals of a democratic system. We don't know what is their hidden agenda once they have consolidated their power within, but we have already seen instances where the judiciary is intimidated. We've already seen instances where institutions of law enforcement are fundamentally weakened. We don't know what else can come from people who've actually done those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Ongama, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for coming on to the AM Report. Ongama Mtimka, always a pleasure talking to him. He is a political studies lecturer at Nelson Mandela University